What do you mean a third of the orders are getting returned for missing parts? Jareth Lowell leaned forward in his office chair, eyes locked on the tablet in front of him. A red line ran across the screen, charting a slow but steady climb in customer returns over the past 4 months. His company, which he built from nothing but a rented garage and a $10,000 loan 12 years ago, now had 13 warehouses across the Midwest. But it wasn't the size that worried him now, it was the cracks starting to show. "I'll talk to district," his COO said, shifting uncomfortably in the seat across from him. "No. I'll talk to the floor." Jareth stood, walked to the corner of the office, and pulled a duffel bag from the closet. He'd been considering this for weeks. He knew something was off, and the reports weren't telling the truth. Morale was down. Efficiency was slipping. He didn't want explanations anymore. He wanted to see it. Warehouse 7, just outside Springfield, was the worst performing location. It had the highest return rate, the most employee complaints, and had recently dropped below quota 3 months in a row. But Jareth had never met the floor workers there. His visits were always announced, and upper management made sure everything looked polished. This time, no suits, no name tags. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a darker brown, and left his watch and wedding ring at home. He wore a faded hoodie, steel-toed boots, and a fake name tag. Eric. He was 51 but still lean, and after a week of studying forklift tutorials and shadowing quietly at a different location, he looked the part. The Springfield warehouse had over 60 employees, and like many of the others, relied on a constant churn of temp workers to keep up. That made it easy for new faces to blend in. Jareth signed in at the front, handed over a forged badge from corporate, and was waved through by a tired receptionist who barely looked up. "Put him on line 4. The shift manager muttered as he handed Jareth a safety vest. "Foreman'll deal with him." Jareth walked into the heart of the warehouse. Conveyor belts hummed. Boxes rattled. The air was thick with dust and the smell of cardboard. His station was near the back, where assembly kits were packed and sealed before shipping. "Name?" a voice barked. Jareth turned. A man with a clipboard, sunglasses perched on his bald head, glared at him. "Eric," Jareth said. "Great. Another idiot. Stay out of the way and don't screw anything up." The foreman didn't bother introducing himself. The work was fast and repetitive. Grab a kit, check the parts list, pack, tape, label. Again. 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 Still, Jareth kept his head down and watched. A young woman to his left, maybe in her mid-20s, was moving with quiet precision, double-checking every box. A guy across from him, older, limping slightly, worked with one hand while the other rested at his lower back. Every few minutes the foreman made rounds. He barked at workers, snatched boxes off the belt, and tossed them back if they weren't closed fast enough. Once, he shouted at a teenager for pausing to wipe sweat off his forehead. "Move your damn hands or get out! You think this is break time?" Jareth froze mid-label. The kid's face flushed red. He mumbled something, but the foreman just scoffed and walked off. During lunch, Jareth sat beside the young woman he'd noticed earlier. "You're fast," he said. She looked at him, surprised. "Been doing it 2 years. Does he always talk to people like that?" She shrugged. "That's Garrett. You learn to stay invisible." Jareth didn't respond. His stomach twisted. He'd built this company to give people good work. Steady jobs. Dignity. But here, something had gone wrong. Later that day, a box jammed in the belt. The older man with the limp tried to clear it, but it slipped and hit the floor. Tools scattered across the concrete. Garrett stormed over. "You blind now, Leonard? You want me to write you up again?" Leonard bent down slowly, his face tight with pain. "I just don't talk. Just clean it up. Or better yet, go home if you're gonna slow us down." That's when it happened. Jareth froze, hand mid-air with a barcode scanner. He stared. Everyone else kept their heads down. Leonard stood up slowly, eyes down. I'm doing my best. Your best sucks. Hey, Jareth said, barely recognizing his own voice. Garrett turned. What? You don't talk to people like that. Garrett took a step toward him. New guy's got balls. You want to join him on the write-up list? Jareth didn't move. He met Garrett's glare, jaw tight, chest burning. Try me. Garrett smirked and walked off, muttering something under his breath. Jareth turned back to the line. No one said anything, but the woman beside him gave him a small nod. That night, Jareth sat in his car in the parking lot long after his shift ended. His hands were still shaking. He stared at the warehouse lights, thinking about Leonard, the teenager, the boxes, the silence. He'd seen enough to know something had rotted here. And it was time to dig it out. The next morning, Jareth arrived an hour early, parking in the far corner of the lot to avoid attention. The warehouse was still dark, only the overhead security lights casting pale cones on the gravel. A few cars sat scattered near the entrance, mostly older models, dented bumpers, rusted edges. He stayed in his seat, watching as the first wave of workers trickled in, heads down, coffee in hand. Inside, the breakroom lights flickered weakly. Jareth took a seat near the vending machines. The walls were stained with old coffee splashes, and the microwave had a "Do not slam" sticker peeling from the door. He kept his hood up, listening. I heard he's on probation again, a man said 2 seats down. Third time this year, someone else replied. But they won't do anything. Garrett's got friends in district. Jareth didn't look up. He didn't need to. He was already piecing together the deeper problem. This wasn't just a bad manager. It was a bad system protecting one. When the bell rang for shift start, he headed straight for line 4. Leonard wasn't there yet. The young woman from yesterday, Marcy, he'd overheard someone call her, was already at her station, gloves on, sorting trays with practiced rhythm. You're early, she said without glancing up. Couldn't sleep, Jareth replied. She paused, then handed him a roll of tape. Better to stay ahead. Garrett's been in a worse mood since the holiday order loads started stacking. Is there a reason he's still here? Her shoulders rose slightly. He's been here forever. He knows numbers, and district doesn't want to train anyone new. Another worker slid into position beside them. It was the teenager Garrett had yelled at yesterday. His name tag read Luis. He moved slowly, eyes darting toward the floor supervisor's office. You good? Jareth asked. Luis nodded but didn't speak. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the first kit of the day. Garrett emerged 20 minutes later, clipboard in hand. Today, he'd added mirrored sunglasses and a Bluetooth earpiece. He didn't speak to anyone, just paced the line like a bouncer checking for trouble. Every few minutes he scribbled something on his clipboard without explanation. As the day wore on, the line fell behind. One of the conveyor belts near the rear jammed again. A temp worker called out for help, and 2 others came over to assist, but Garrett simply stood at the end of the belt, arms crossed, watching. Not my problem, he muttered when someone pointed out the backup. Jareth stepped forward, grabbing a rubber mallet from under the tool rack. He disengaged the lock on the jammed guide rail and nudged the stuck platform free. The belt stuttered, then rolled forward again. Garrett didn't say thank you. He just took out his phone and walked away. Marcy turned to Jareth. You shouldn't have done that. Fixing anything gets you on his radar. I'm already on it, Jareth replied. By noon, Leonard had arrived. He moved slower than yesterday, dragging one foot slightly. His forehead glistened with sweat, even though the warehouse was still cool. As they worked, Jareth leaned closer to Luis. How many hours they put you on? 6 days a week. 9-hour shifts, Luis said quietly. I asked for Sundays off. Garrett said if I wanted weekends I should go work in retail. Jareth clenched his jaw. He knew the company policy allowed for 1 weekend day off for anyone under 21, especially students. Somewhere along the way, The line between policy and practice had been erased. At 2:45, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the warehouse. Everyone froze. Jareth saw Leonard lying on the floor near the pallet bay, one hand gripping the side of his ribcage. A wooden crate had tipped sideways and toppled onto the ground beside him, the contents a dozen box tool sets scattered across the concrete. "Don't move him!" someone shouted. Garrett appeared seconds later, walking not running toward the scene. "What the hell happened?" a floor worker spoke up. "He was trying to shift the crate by himself. Said he didn't want to wait." Garrett looked down, then knelt beside Leonard. "You're not bleeding. Can you stand?" Leonard didn't respond. His breathing was shallow. "Get up. If we call an ambulance, it's going on the report." Jareth stepped between them. "No. You don't touch him. Call for a medic and shut down the bay. You don't tell me how to run my floor." Garrett spat. Jareth turned to the nearest floor phone, punched in the emergency extension, and reported a worker down with suspected injury. Within minutes, the plant medic arrived with a stretcher. Leonard was taken to the on-site clinic, while a safety officer began snapping photos of the area. Garrett stood by the wall, arms folded. "He did it to himself," he said loudly. "No one told him to move that crate." Louise spoke up. "You told him last week that if he asked for help again, you'd dock his bonus." Garrett's face turned red. "That's a lie." "No, it's not," Marcy said. "I was there too." Jareth turned to the safety officer. "You getting all this?" The man nodded, still taking notes. Garrett stormed off toward the foreman's office. A minute later, the plant manager, a tall, wiry man named Belson, walked out and asked to speak with Louise and Marcy privately. By the end of the shift, Leonard hadn't returned. Word spread that he'd been taken off-site for X-rays. The line ran in silence for the last hour. Jareth counted 5 more errors: missing parts, mislabeled boxes, unsealed kits. No one had the energy to care. Outside, in the parking lot, Jareth caught up to Marcy as she unlocked her car. "Was today typical?" he asked. "No. Today was quiet." She opened the door, paused. "You asked why Garrett's still here," she said. "Because the people who could do something don't see what we do." Jareth nodded slowly. "They will." She drove off. Jareth stood alone, the sun beginning to dip behind the treeling. He pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, and typed out a list. Garrett, consistent verbal abuse, failure to report injury. Louise, underage weekend shifts, policy violations. Leonard, unsafe load handling, no team lift support. Marcy, high performance, underrecognized, steady presence. Belson, passive management, no floor engagement during emergency assembly. Line 4, understaffed, outdated equipment. No ramp for heavier crates. He saved it, then called his executive assistant. "Clear my schedule," he said. "I'm staying here until this is fixed." He didn't wait for a reply. He hung up and looked back at the warehouse. Tomorrow, he wasn't going in as Eric. He was going in as Jareth Lowell. And he wasn't asking questions anymore. He was demanding answers. Jareth arrived before sunrise, this time through the front entrance, not the employee door. The receptionist gave him a puzzled look. He hadn't come in this way all week. "Mr. Lowell?" she said, standing quickly. He nodded once. "Is Belson in yet?" "He's in his office." Without waiting, Jareth walked past the front desk and into the administrative wing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the hallway smelled faintly of burnt coffee. He reached the warehouse manager's office and knocked once before stepping in. Belson looked up from his desk, clearly startled. "Jareth! I didn't know you were coming today." "I'm aware," Jareth said flatly, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk." "Now." Belson gestured to the chair across from him. "Of course. What's going on?" Jareth sat but didn't lean back. "I've spent the last 3 days working the floor as a temp." Belson blinked. "I wasn't informed of that." "That's the point." He laid his phone on the desk and opened the Notes app, scrolling briefly before speaking again. Let's start with Garrett. He is abusive, negligent, and unfit to supervise anyone. I saw him berate a minor, ignore a safety hazard, and pressure an injured worker to stay on the line. Belson opened his mouth, but Jareth cut him off. Don't explain. It's done. He's finished here. I want him out by noon. Belson hesitated. We'll need to coordinate with HR, I'm not asking. This is a direct order. He's terminated, effective immediately. No severance. Belson finally nodded. Understood. Second, Jareth continued. Why is Leonard still lifting full crates alone? He's one of our senior guys. He usually refuses help. Refusing help doesn't mean we let him risk injury. Why are there no lift assist tools or secondary staff on that end of the line? Belson shifted. Budget restrictions. We had delays getting the new equipment approved. Jareth stared at him. You've had 12 months. I read the capital expenditure logs. No request was ever submitted. Belson looked down. We prioritized conveyor upgrades instead. You prioritized the belt over the people. There was a long pause. From now on, Jareth said quietly, no equipment gets ordered unless it directly improves worker safety or performance. If someone's going to bleed for this company, it won't be because we were cheap. Belson nodded again, this time without speaking. I'm walking the floor in 10 minutes. Jareth said, standing. I expect Garrett gone by the time I'm back in this office. And I want you there with me. Not hiding behind this desk. He left without waiting for an answer. The warehouse was already humming when he stepped onto the floor. Workers glanced up, then quickly looked away. Word had clearly spread. Marcy was at her station, gloves on, eyes focused. Louise stood nearby, hands twitching slightly as he adjusted the sealing arm. Jareth approached them directly. Morning, he said. Marcy nodded but didn't pause her work. Louise looked at him uncertainly. I owe both of you something, Jareth said. You spoke up yesterday. That matters. Louise's throat bobbed. We didn't want trouble. We just... You told the truth, Jareth said. That's not trouble. That's courage. He turned to Marcy. You've kept this line running through chaos. I saw that. From today forward, you're promoted to floor lead. Full benefits. Pay bump. You'll report directly to the plant manager. Her eyes widened, but she didn't say anything at first. I didn't think anyone noticed, she said finally. I didn't, Jareth replied. Now I do. He turned to Louise. We'll be adjusting your schedule. You'll get Sundays off. No exceptions. And if anyone pressures you again about hours, you come to me. Louise nodded quickly, blinking fast. By the time they reached the next station, Belson had appeared beside him. Garrett was conspicuously absent. Jareth didn't ask. He stopped near the rear freight zone, where a group of temps were struggling with a half-collapsed pallet. Boxes leaned at odd angles, and one of the workers, a wiry man in his 40s, was trying to brace the load with a broom handle. Stop, Jareth called out. The group froze. No one touches that until we get a jack and a support brace. He turned to Belson. Where's the floor safety coordinator? He's part-time. Not anymore. Jareth walked over to the damaged pallet and crouched down, inspecting the base. The wood was splintered, likely reused too many times. He stood, brushing off his hands. From now on, no pallet gets reused more than twice. Rotate everything out. I want quality checks on all incoming shipments. Belson scribbled notes. They made their way along the perimeter, where the packaging team worked in near silence. One of the women at the end of the line had a wrist brace on, her right hand moving gingerly across the scanner. Jareth approached. How long's that been bothering you? She looked startled. 2 weeks. It's carpal. I told the supervisor, but they said I needed a doctor's note. You have one? I can't afford the visit. Jareth turned to Belson. Our insurance covers preventive assessments. Why wasn't that used? She's a temp, Belson said. No. She's a worker in my building. Make the clinic appointment. We'll cover it. Belson hesitated. That goes against our contractor policy. Then change the policy. He looked back at the woman. What's your name? Jamie. You're off the line today. We'll find you light-duty work until that heals. You're not risking a permanent injury for a paycheck. As they continued their walk, Jareth noticed something else. A group of workers in the far corner, near the outbound dock, were seated on overturned crates, clearly idle. No one spoke to them. No tasks had been assigned. He walked over. Who's your lead? One of them pointed vaguely in the direction of the rear office. Did anyone give you instructions today? They shook their heads. Belson caught up. That's the overflow crew. They're only used on high-volume days. Then why are they clocked in? We keep them on reserve, just in case. Jareth stepped back, looking at the group 6 people, all in uniform, all paid to sit. Assign them to audit returns, he said. Start with the last 30 days. Every package that came back incomplete, I want logged. But that's not there, they're here. They're paid. Put them to work. He turned to the crew. You'll be trained this afternoon. Anyone who wants a permanent role will make space. You're not furniture. As he finished, his phone buzzed. A message from corporate legal. Garrett's termination paperwork had been completed. No contest. He looked at Belson. One more thing. I want a full culture audit of this warehouse. Anonymous feedback, line by line. And I want your face in that break room once a day. No clipboard. Just ears. Belson nodded, slower this time. Jareth scanned the floor one last time. Workers were watching now, not hiding it. Some curious, others cautious. But the fear, the silence, the weight that had shifted. He took a breath. I'm not here to play hero, he said, voice low. I'm here because I forgot what this place really is. That won't happen again. He turned toward the stairs leading to the observation deck. From above, the warehouse looked almost orderly. But now he knew the truth. Order without respect was just control. And that wasn't what he built this company for. Not anymore. The following week began with a cold, gray morning and a mandatory all-hands meeting that drew every worker in Warehouse 7 to the center loading bay. A folding table had been set up near the fire exit, lined with handouts, clipboards, and a small speaker system. No music. No banners. Just quiet tension and the low murmur of over 60 employees unsure of what to expect. Jareth stood near the center, wearing the same boots he'd worked in, no tie, no clipboard. He didn't clear his throat or wait for silence, he just began speaking. I'm not here to give a pep talk, he said. You already know what's wrong. He paused until the shuffling stopped. I saw it myself. I worked beside you. I packed the same kits. I sweated through the same 10-hour shifts. And I watched people get ignored, blamed, pushed, and hurt under leadership that should have protected them. He let that settle. That's over. A few heads turned toward Belson, who stood a few feet behind him with his arms at his sides. His face was drawn tight, but he didn't interrupt. Starting today, we're doing 3 things. First, we're rebuilding how this place runs on your terms. Not mine. Not district's. Yours. Every department will elect 1 rep to meet weekly with management. No agendas. No filters. Just your words. In that room, you'll have veto power on safety decisions. No applause. Just stillness. Second, anyone working more than 48 hours a week is now flagged for review. If you're consistently over that, you'll be moved to a rotation system. No more burning through bodies just to meet a deadline. He looked directly at a row of workers near the back, older, tired faces he now recognized from the early shifts. And third, we're ending the temp cycle. You've earned stability. If you've worked more than 90 days here, you're eligible for direct hire. Full benefits. No exceptions. Our HR team is outside right now with packets. You'll keep your job while the transfer happens. There was a shift, then a breath in the room. Not celebration. Something quieter. Relief. He looked over at Marcy, standing near the front beside Louise. She met his eyes but didn't speak. I can't undo what happened here, Jareth said. But I can make sure it never happens again. That afternoon, the changes began. The rear loading zone was temporarily shut down and cleared for reconfiguration. 2 industrial lift assist arms, drawn from a nearby idle facility, were installed with help from regional maintenance staff. A local contractor was brought in to reinforce the flooring near the outbound dock, where shifting loads had been damaging the support beams. The upgrades weren't cosmetic, they were structural, and they were overdue. Jamie, the woman with the wrist brace, was reassigned to inventory tracking in the climate-controlled mezzanine. She worked with a tablet now, scanning returns and cross-referencing part shortages. Her clinic appointment had confirmed early-stage tendinitis. With rest and new duties, she'd avoid permanent damage. She didn't say much to Jareth when he passed her station, but she nodded once, and that was enough. In one of the most heavily used department's returns, Luis began his first shift as a trainee under the new rotation system. He was quieter than most of the others, methodical in his approach. He'd been paired with a seasoned worker from another warehouse for mentoring. When Jareth stopped by to check on their progress, Luis asked a question about part identification codes. It wasn't about the policy. It was about doing the job right. That mattered more than anything. As promised, Garrett was gone. His nameplate had been scraped off the foreman's door, and his office was empty. In his place, Marcy was now acting floor lead. She didn't change everything overnight. She didn't try to. But she did one thing immediately. She moved her desk out of the office and into the open space between the lines. "I'm not managing from a door," she said when Jareth asked. She handled the role with a quiet, deliberate pace. She created a rotating feedback log that anyone could contribute to anonymously. She began tracking error rates not to punish workers, but to identify where supply inconsistencies were throwing things off. In a week, accuracy improved by 9%. Belson didn't escape scrutiny. After his passive oversight during the injury incident, Jareth had given him one final opportunity: lead transparently or step aside. To his credit, Belson didn't flinch. He began spending 2 hours a day on the floor, not to monitor, but to listen. He hosted short, standing check-ins every Thursday, 15 minutes, no agenda, just open space. He didn't always have answers, but he showed up. 2 weeks later, Leonard returned. He walked slowly, a medical brace still firm around his torso. But he came back cleared for light duty, reassigned to the receiving team where lifting wasn't required. Jareth met him at the gate that morning. "You didn't have to come back," Jareth said. Leonard shrugged. "This place means something different now." That was the whole point. Outside of Springfield, changes rippled. Other warehouses were placed under review. Anonymous worker surveys were rolled out company-wide. A new safety protocol was introduced, authored not by district, but by the people who loaded pallets and packed kits every day. Jareth didn't return to his office for another month. He rotated between sites instead, unannounced, unfiltered. No disguise. Just presence. One evening, long after most of the shifts had ended, he walked through the quiet halls of Warehouse 7. The air was still. The conveyor belts rested. The floor was clean. He stopped beside line 4. The empty station stood in perfect alignment, gloves folded neatly on the benches, labels stacked. He leaned forward, picked up a small, handwritten note taped beside the scanner. It read, "We see each other now." That's what changed. No signature. Just ink on paper. But he knew it wasn't for him, not really. It was for everyone who stayed when things were broken, who kept working through silence, who waited for someone to notice. And finally, someone had.